Hi, and thank you for joining. Today, I am going to be speaking on faith and works. Sometimes I've heard over the years the scripture taken out of context, such as I've heard people say, well, I'm going to go do this by faith. I'm going to do this and trust God. I'm going to go ahead and do this work to show my faith, meaning that it's something that they might want to happen, and I'm not against that. I'm just saying that in context, what James was really talking about is different from how the scripture of doing works or trying to show God that you are believing Him from something by going out and trying to make it happen because you prayed about it. Now, if you pray the will of God, you don't have to worry about whether it's going to come to pass or not. It shall come to pass in His timing. Now, what I want to give clarity to again is the fact of what faith without works is dead about. In the book of James, well, the letter of James, not necessarily a book, it was a letter James wrote. And it's in the second chapter, and it starts at verse 14 through 26, and he gives clarity. And it says, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Okay? Then he goes into detail on what it means to show your faith by doing good to others if you can. Right? So then he goes on to say that in 17, that faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. So that in itself explains why certain people who declare they're doing great things as if God is impressed. And God is not impressed for any great things that we do unless it is according to His will. So those works by faith now is useless if the faith does not follow the expectation of Jesus. I'm going to go a little further. It says in 19, you say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. How foolish! Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? Don't you remember that our ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his actions when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see, his faith and his actions work together. His actions made his faith complete. Now, I want to start right there because I want to just tie that into what I just said. Unless your faith is aligned with Jesus' expectations, your works according to that faith is really useless. In this context, Abraham was attributed to having faith, but clearly Abraham's faith was tied to his obedience to what God told him to do. He didn't just have faith and go put his son on the altar, okay? Believe in God that he would cover the sacrifice that Abraham wanted to give before the Lord. No, Abraham was going to give his son as a sacrifice on the altar because that's what God told him to do. God knew that he had a plan in place, but also he was showing Abraham where he was spiritually as far as his faith is concerned unto God. So that's what I want to make clear. It's so easy to believe that just because you got these works and you believe in God, that you showing your faith by these works that God may not even have anything to do with, because that's not what He called you to do. So if your works line up with your faith in God that He's called you to do, then that's acceptable. See, this act of faith that Abraham had was acceptable to God because that's what God told him to do. And by faith, Abraham did exactly what God told him to do. Okay? Now let's read a little further. in 22, it says, "You see, his faith and his actions work together. His actions made his faith complete. And so it happened just as the scriptures say. Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. He was even called the friend of God." So you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Again, clarifying, not just by what we do, but what we do out of obedience to God in full context. All right? I gave you the scripture. Now I'm giving you full context because this can be overlooked because James did not specify that part, what we do in obedience unto God and not by faith alone. That can be totally missed. But as you see in the context he gave, obviously it's not just faith alone, and it's not just faith in works, but it's faith in obedience to what God said to do. It takes faith to obey God. Now, it goes further. Rahab the prostitute is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. Just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. And I want to stress good works, okay? So, in your faith, your works should align with the obedience unto God, which makes your faith valid. I hope these words have found you well. And if you definitely need more clarity, it is so important that you seek the Lord. Don't seek man. Don't seek a person. Go to God first and ask the Lord to give you clarity on this teaching that I just gave. He himself, who is the author of his word, knows how to give you clarity and understanding of what he said greater than any person. Now, if he sends a person to you to give you clarity, it's still his doing, okay? But seek him first, the one who has all the answers. And until the next time you sit with me, God bless you. Enjoy your tea.